we must begin. In this room, we have 3 papers we'll be presenting for now, but I see the schedule is only 2 presenters. Maybe 1 presenter have 2 papers we'll be presenting then. So, and as I know, we have SMERU from IRSA. We just already hear before from the assistant committee, so we can follow the regulation, the rule, as we know as before we follow the IRSA conference. So before I start this session, maybe I want to introduce myself. My name is Prince Charles Heston. You also call me Charles. And now as a lecturer in State University in Indonesia. And I'm very grateful for now to be moderator in this forum. So maybe we can begin this session with the presenting from Mrs. Elsa and Mr. Rifai.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Can you hear clear my voice?
Yes, I can hear your voice clearly.
Yes.
Okay. May I begin?
For the first, I give a chance to Mrs. Elsa to presenting the paper about income inequality and education outcomes in a decentralized Indonesia from Mrs. Matondang Elsa Siburian, Ministry of Finance. The time is yours. Please welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Charles, for the opportunity. I hope everyone's okay in these challenging times. So without further ado, I will continue my presentation. I will share my PowerPoint. Okay, is everybody can see my PowerPoint? Is it okay? Okay, thank you. So this is the title of my presentation, the income inequality and education.
Yes, you can see clearly.
Okay, this is the title, income inequality and education outcomes in the decentralized Indonesia. So this paper is under review of a publication right now. I tried to present it in the IRSA conference. So this is the outline. First is the background, so and then second the previous studies that build the theory of this paper, and then third is the empirical analysis and the results, and then the last one is the policy recommendation based on the results. So the background of this study, first the objective is to explain the relationship between the income inequality, to be exact, the regional income inequality, and the educational outcomes in the decentralized Indonesia. So as we know, we are already almost more than 2 decades on implementing the decentralization, but still there are some gap within income distribution and then educational outcomes across the regions in Indonesia. So this paper tries to connect it, the dots between income inequality and the educational outcomes. And the other background is the some theories states there are potential reverse causality between income and education. So we'll elaborate on this matter on later on. And why I choose Indonesia? First, because of course we are in Indonesia, and then second, we already implement more than 20 years of decentralization. And in this paper, I emphasize on the expenditure-based decentralization, since Indonesian decentralization is more is emphasized more on decentralization instead of revenue decentralization. There are several previous studies that may indicate a potential simultaneity or reverse causality between the interest variables. So the first school of studies mentioned that education may reduce inequality, and then they will lowering the income gap. Because better access for education, especially for children from the rich family, the family can afford a better education. And then the result for better education, they can secure a well-paid jobs. And with well-paid jobs, they can have a high salary compared to the children comes from the poor family. So maybe you get familiar with this thing, with the term of inequality of opportunity. So this is the first school of studies mentioned that so education will affect the income. And on the other way around, some school of studies said that income also improves the access to education. So it's like eggs and chicken, which one is first? So the other type school of studies mentioned, although there are many increase of for the portion of household income to the education, but still the rich family invest more on education compared to the middle and the low income family. There are some studies mentioned that like rich family, in order to secure the future of their children, they are willing to sacrifice a larger portion of their income to invest on their children education compared to the middle and low income family. That is exactly makes sense because the rich family, they already surpass their basic needs, but it's different case with the middle and low income family. So based on those theories, we can say there are potential simultaneity between the two interest variables. So this study addressed these issues. So if we fail to address these issues, the estimation will be biased and not efficient. So I use the data of Indonesian province level. This is unbalanced panel data because since several data are still empty because it's not available. And then I am using long difference instrumental variables. I will tell you more about long difference. What is the long difference LDIV in a minute. And then why I choose this method? Because on the paper, Han et al. In 2007, there is a existence of persistence of income inequality due to inequality in opportunity. So it means that children who come from the rich family, most likely they will be able to get jobs and then nice paying jobs. And so the fluctuation of income is very small across the years. And so does the children who comes from the low income family. The fluctuation of the children and the parents from the poor family it's not so big. So that's the case of persistence. And then of course we're already talking about the potential joint determination. And then the short time dimension, there's only 18 years, so it's very small. It's very small observation because I have to include the effect of fiscal decentralization in here. So how we do that is pretty rare. Not many papers use this, but actually it's very useful. So the paper used the difference of all the difference of the lag variable. So I use 18 years. So I use the long difference. So instead of the first difference, I use the long difference. That is the 1 to 18 difference as instruments, and then I iterate the instrument variables with the 2SLS equation. So there are some iteration there until it avoids the endogeneity. And then for the data itself, I'm using income inequality based on the population with coefficient of variation and dependent variables. As you can see here, I use literacy to measure the education outcomes. fiscal decentralization measure, I'm using expenditure based fiscal decentralization. So it computes by the share of regional government expenditure through total government expenditure. Why I choose this, as I mentioned before, because since the Indonesian decentralization, the law allows the government, the local government, to spend their allocation, the intra-government allocation, freely, almost freely, especially for the general allocation fund. But they have a very limited power to collect the revenue, as we know that the main taxing rights still remains at the central government. So only the central government can collect most of the taxes, as you know, like income taxes, VAT, but the local government only allows for special, maybe like some property tax, retribution. That's in the law. That's stated in the law. So it's very limited. And then I'm used the regional GDP and its square and the share of population below 14 and above 65. And then the share of urban population, share of openness to trade, the employment and geographical area. The choice of the control variables is based on the previous study which related to this topic. And then next. Okay, so now we are going to see the result. So the result, sorry. Wait a minute. Okay, thank you. So the result indicates that there is the effect of the education outcome worsens the income gap. So as we mentioned before, after we controlling for the endogeneity, the effect of education worsens the income gap. So the reason behind this result may lies in the fiscal decentralization conducted by the central government. It allows the local government to provide a customized education policy. Of course, the central government has their own policy on the education sectors, such as the free 9 years education sectors, which is uniformly applied in all over Indonesia. But there are some room for the local government to improve or to modify with their intra-government funds. But not many people use this. So for example, as we know, there are 9 years education, free education for all the children all over Indonesia. But if we see, maybe only middle and low income family use that facilities, but not for the rich family. We know that there are many international schools in across Indonesia. So, and then the family, the children who attend that school mostly comes from the rich income family. Okay. Can you hear my phone? Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. And then, because there are difference between the school, which provided by the government, and then the school, which provided by the private sector, which is not, so people who comes from the rich family, they have more choices. So of course, they will choose the best education for their children. And then the outcome will be different between the children. So I'm not saying that children from the low income family will not succeed, but most likely the case Yeah, thank you for the reminder. But most likely the case, if you attend low quality school, which is most likely free or cheap, the results will be different if you're graduated from the prestige school. So, for example, if you're applying for jobs, people will tend to look at your CV and then see if you are graduated from which school and how many and the grade of your GPA. But the point of where do you graduate it is very important. So the thing is, children who comes from the rich family, they can secure well-paying jobs, and with them secure the well-paying jobs, they can secure their income. And while on the other way around, for the children on the poor family, they cannot afford to have the access for better education, and then it will cause the lower productivity, and jobs with lower productivity, they will not pay as much as the job with higher productivity. So most likely, it will tend to increase the income gap. So that is what it means by the results. And then there are at least two big recommendations from this paper, which maybe help or assist the government how to deal with this this phenomena. First, we already know that every year, almost one third of our national budget goes to the local government. So and then 20% of our national budget goes to the education sector. So in terms of resources or funding or financial resources, I do believe it is enough to improve the education in all over Indonesia. But if we're talking about the effectivity of the budget, it's beyond this topic. It's beyond this paper. So now I'm trying to propose at least two policy recommendations. So for the central government, that's the first one. Should establish a minimum compulsory education standard. So at least the central government give a minimum standard that the same from Aceh to Papua. Maybe with the teachers' quality, maybe with the infrastructure's quality. Infrastructure, which means the library quality, laboratory quality. So should be at least the difference will not vary that much across the countries. And then because we already have education budget. Of course, it's up to the at some point it's up to the local government to allocate their budget on the education. But at least they have to fulfill the minimum requirements set by the central government. So the large education budget is not followed by the increasing of the student performance. As we know, the OECD each year they assess the performance of the children. It's a PISA score. They score reading, math, and then science. And Indonesia always scores very low, even compared to our neighbors in Asian country. And then with the low performance of the students, when they're graduated from the school, the chance is they don't have a very productive skill. They don't have a very productive skill, and they fail to secure a well-paid jobs. So on the long run, it will affect the productivity after they enter the labor force. So that is why maybe we always end up saying that education is everything. So it access with the better life, and then of course related with better income. and how to compete with the other neighboring country. I think we need to assess our education system. And then the second proposal is providing qualified schools in all over Indonesia. Maybe providing one school, at least one or two schools, governed by the national government, and have a very nice facilities. So at least on the one region, this school can accommodate the children on the region, and they will have a different qualification. So this school will increase the access of a better education and increasing the chances to compete. Of course, we already have some affirmation scholarship and other things that we are focused on the low income family, but still the influence of the government, especially the central government, is very important in these education outcomes. So I think this is the last of my presentation. So if anyone have a comment or a suggestion, is very welcome. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. Elsa, for your presentation. Such as good topic, I think. And before I continue, I'm so sorry because my internet connection is not stable, so I will off my camera. But we still can continue our session. Okay, for now I open session for question and answer for all the participants or other presenter in this room. Please welcome. You can directly raise your hand or just speak. Want to give a question, or you can send by chat room.
I am Pak Prince. Thank you very much, Mrs. Elsa. It's a very nice presentation.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Mr. Hairullah.
Yes. I am from Ternate, Miss Elsa, not Maluku, one island in eastern part of Indonesia.
Yeah.
It's very nice for us to in the periphery area in the eastern part of Indonesia about the situation of education. According to your research, that you state that need to be better access to low to the poor family, to low income family. Because maybe in your research and you have you use the data panel from each province in Indonesia, and if how I want to know about your policy that you state that is there any because we know that there's high disparity between western part and eastern part about that situation, because that you state infrastructure, quality infrastructure, quality any other quality, especially in infrastructure. And yes, we know that in eastern part of Indonesia, the network in digital maybe in the infrastructure is very incomplete. Very incomplete. So I think that how do you can what's your solution, and what is your if we meet this situation, maybe you can give the best recommendation or the best solution for the eastern part region Indonesia. So especially for the that you say that at least there is one school in international standard maybe, or But it is maybe in Maluku, not Maluku, maybe it's NTT, Papua, maybe it's still range, it's still rarely to how to meet it. That's how to realize it, because so maybe that's maybe okay. Mr. Sada, thank you. Mr. Sada. How do you think about it? Yes.
Thank you, Pak Khairul Aimin, for the. It's a very nice question. Actually, is yes, I know this question will rise on this session, and for your information, Pak Khairul, I did my research on ND. Is the part on the Eastern Nusa Tenggara. So while I was doing my research there, it's very, I don't know, maybe it's several years ago, but hopefully it's getting better now. The weird part is like after 6 p.m., yeah, after 6 p.m., the electricity always goes off. I don't know why. So, and then while I was doing my research, I'm connected with my fellow in the tax office there. And then when I went from the house to the tax office, because in his house, the electricity is off. So we have to go to the office because the office has a generator, the genset. And then the strange thing, I see in front of the office, the tax office, there are so many children. They are studying under the street lamp. And it gives me goosebumps because I've never seen this in the western part of Indonesia. I come from Medan, from North Sumatra. Even in the rural area, in North Sumatra, we don't have this experience. But what the first thing comes to my mind when I saw the children, how can these children compete with the children in Java Island? Because they don't even the very basic infrastructures to study. I mean, like, how about if it's rain? I ask my friend. If it's rain, I will ask them to enter the office. So they can study on the tax office there. So the thing is, sir, I'm not with having the same standard, especially for passing the national standard for national exams, same standard from Aceh to Papua. It has two sides. It has advantage. Of course, the advantage it will have a uniform performance from children despite wherever they come from. But the condition only applies if the supporting infrastructures is equal. Yeah, if the supporting infrastructure is not equal, you should not have the same standard. So that is why on the policy recommendation, I mentioned at least on each province, the central government established an international level of education who can accommodate children from the poor family. So subsidize. We have the education fund for it. Yeah, subsidize them, because I do believe that children from poor family is not necessarily stupid. No, they just lack of opportunity. So to break the inequality of opportunity, here's the moment for the government to break this inequality of opportunity. That is why, sir, we have to endorse the local government too. Because in the local government, we have an intragovernmental fund, the DAU, Dana Alokasi Umum, which can used by the local government to support. So the central government established the international school, and then the local government back up the central government on that school. So I think it will be a very nice. They establish a dormitory so the children can sleep on the school and provide lunches and breakfast. So it's like it's So everything is subsidized by the central government and then backed up by the local government. So I think it will help the children from all across the region to have the same opportunity to access a better education, despite of the family, despite of the rich or the poor or the middle income family. I think that's my answer to your question. But it's a very nice question, Pak Hair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Hairullah. This is my colleague.
Oh.
Okay, Mrs. Elsa, I think your time is up, and very good topic, very interesting. It's talking about about educational and inequality, I think. Okay, still the same presenter, I think, for the next session. Mrs. Elsa will give a paper, have a topic, influence of fiscal decentralization and ethnic diversity on educational outcome, evidence from Indonesia. I think Mrs. Elsa always focus on the same scope about decentralization, about income equality, about government expenditure. I think it's very interesting for us to listen the presentation today. Okay, I will give you a chance for 15 minutes, and the time is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Charles. I will try to present my second presentation. Okay. Yeah. So for my second presentation, the title is Influence of Fiscal Decentralization, Ethnic Diversity, and Educational Outcomes the same from Indonesia. So difference from the previous presentation, I include one more factor that I think matters for Indonesian case. That is the ethnic diversity factors. So the same outline, background, previous study, empirical analysis and result, and policy recommendation. So we start with the objectives of this paper. The objective, as you can see, is very straightforward from the title. So I like to see the link between fiscal decentralization and ethnic diversity on educational outcome. As Mr. Charles mentioned, I focus on this sector since my PhD focus on this matters. And then the background. Well, there are studies by Veron 2003. That's the first study. No, sorry, Easterly and Levine in 1997. The study mentioned more heterogeneous diversity associated with low economic growth. So there are several factors that may affect the economic growth in terms of the more diverse social diversity in one society. So they have the study was conducted in Africa. As we know, Africa consists of I think hundreds of tribes. So the postulate was the more heterogeneous the society, it will associate it with lower economic outcomes. Why? There are several reasons for that. Then we can elaborate the reasons on the second topic. So why I choose Indonesia? So still the same. The budget for education is large, and then we already conduct in fiscal decentralization, and then we have a heterogeneous society. So there are study from Veron 2003. It mentioned that Indonesia is one of the more diverse countries in terms of ethnic diversity in Indonesia, in the world. So I will introduce you to two index who measure the ethnic diversity. So in this paper. So what is the study say? The previous study said. Okay, on the effect of decentralization or education outcomes, there are ambiguity. There is no crystal clear results on how decentralization affect the education outcomes. So one school study said, okay, with decentralization, the government is closer to the society. So the local government knows more about the needs of local people compared to the central government. Because central government, they usually don't have the time to customize the needs of each region. So instead of customizing, they provide the uniform program for all across the country, from Sabang to Merauke. It's the same policy without considering the local needs or the local preference, which may different, and of course it's different. And then that's the second. And then the decentralization, because the government is closer to the people now in the decentralization. So the local people, they can supervise what's the government doing with their money. On the region. It is very hard. I mean, like, because since the people is very far from the central government, the controlling from the people is not so intense compared to the people who can participate in the local on the local government. So that's the thing. So if you locally supervise and then the local participation is high, it will improve the education. So that's the theory say. But there are some theories said like, no, that's not the case. There are limitations of the local government. Yeah, they may not know what's the best for their region because they don't have the source, they don't have enough resource to know what's the preference of the local people. And then there's a chance for overlap management. Overlap management, maybe it will just lengthen the bureaucratic process, and it may lower the education outcome. So there's ambiguity between the school A and school B on the effect of decentralization education outcomes. And then, okay. So, and then on the effect of ethnic diversity and education outcomes, they are also the same. There is no clarity of the previous study. So some research mentioned there is a debit diversity. Debit diversity means when a region consists of heterogeneous society. Yeah, it means it's a talent of pool because each ethnic, they have their own skill. They can complete each other. Yeah, they can complete each other and they can collaborate each other to be a more progressive region. So maybe, for example, they use the examples like cities like New York, London, and in case maybe in Indonesia it's Jakarta. There are many people comes from different ethnicity in Jakarta, and the growth in Jakarta is in terms of the ethnic diversity, the growth in Jakarta is larger compared to other regions. And then, but on the other way around, there is also some study mentioned ethnic diversity worsens the education outcomes. The channeling, it's because first, there are studies mention teachers' attitude. There are studies mention like teachers are more reluctant to teach children who come from different ethnicity. Not because of their personal, judgment, but maybe because of the communication barrier. Yeah, as you know, maybe on the rural area, some teachers still use the native language to teach the children, especially in the elementary. Yeah, but if the teacher who has different ethnicity with the children, and they both, especially the children, don't know Indonesian language very well. So it is very hard to the teacher to explain it by the native language if the teacher is not coming from the same ethnicity. There is a study about that. So, and then what is the data and methodology? I use the same, and then I use system GMM because there are potential so joint determination between decentralization and education income. Since the amount of decentralization is determined by the Human Development Index, and in the Human Development Index, there is education outcomes there. So it's like a reverse causation. So I try to avoid, I try to circumvent the issues of endogeneity through system GMM. So I use literacy and then Gini index to measure income distribution, regional GDP, transfer per capita, primary school enrollment rate, geographical area, population, conflicts, fiscal decentralization, ethnic decentralization, and the interaction between decentralization and ethnic fractionalization. So what is ethnic fractionalization? Ethnic fractionalization showing the probability. If you take one person in one area, the probability of 1 and 2, these 2 persons comes from the same ethnicity. So to make things easier for you, let's say, for example, where UGM now, Yogyakarta. Yogyakarta has a very low fractionalization index. Because why? Because if you take 2 people randomly in Yogyakarta, yeah, almost 100%, more than 90%, these 2 people is Javanese. They can understand each other. Okay, that's the case of Yogyakarta. Now we go to so if we go to Papua, let's say, and then randomly we choose 2 people, Mr. A and Mr. B. So the chance of Mr. A and Mr. B come from the same ethnicity is very low, because there are so many ethnic diversity, and there are so many ethnic coexist in Papua or Maluku. So maybe they come from the mountain part, or maybe they come from other part, coastal part of the, okay? Okay, yeah, 2 minutes, I have 2 minutes. Okay, that's the, so, see, we can see the result. So there are 3 models here. When we include decentralization improves the education outcome. When we include decentralization and ethnic diversity, decentralization improves education outcome, but ethnic diversity, yeah, has negative relationship with educational outcome. It means, yeah, more diverse the region, more diverse the region, the education outcome is lower compared to the homogeneous society. But when we include the interaction term, decentralization times ethnic diversity, the result is different. When we are controlling for ethnic diversity, the positive result of decentralization on education is lower when we controlling for ethnic diversity. So what does it mean? That doesn't mean, it means like the effect of it's 9 minutes or 2 minutes? Okay, 2 minutes, thank you. Okay, so if I have 9 minutes, then I will go back to here. So when we're controlling for ethnic diversity, the positive effect of fiscal decentralization improving the education outcomes is lessened by the negative effect of the ethnic diversity. So how do we interpret this result? We'll get to that later. So that's the interaction part meaning. And the interaction part is negative and significant. So now, what is the interpretation of that result? I try to interpret this result by these 3 points. The first, yeah, although there are positive contribution of fiscal decentralization, but still, the ethnic diversity effects is bigger. The negative effect of the ethnic diversity is bigger than the positive effect of the fiscal decentralization. First, it maybe goes to the communication barrier, as I mentioned before, through the communication barrier. And then it affects the teacher performance. As I told you, there are studies that is, I think, PAU 1999. So it stated that the language barrier in Indonesia is one of the obstacles why the performance of the heterogeneous regions is lower compared to the homogeneous regions. And then it affects teacher performance. Secondly, the teacher performance is not personal, but it's more related to the communication barrier. As I mentioned before, in the rural area, most children, they don't know Indonesian language very well. So, especially in the first years of education, the teacher has to use the mother language to explain to the children. So if this teacher has different ethnicity with the children, with the students, it is very hard for them to connect and to understand each other, and it reduces the effectivity of the learning process. There are some studies about that. And the third one is it affects the trust and community participation. We know that the studies also mention when the region consists of a heterogeneous society, the trust is lower because we tend not to give more to people who's not come from the same ethnicity from us. It's not only in Indonesia; it's everywhere. It's everywhere. In America, in Africa, there is a research about that. But if the society is more homogeneous, the society willing to give more because they know if they give more, the one who benefit is also come from the same ethnicity from them. So that is the logic behind that. Okay, and then the last one. So based on that, how this result? This is a very interesting result actually, but we're Indonesian. We have to address this issue. I don't mean any racism in this study. Yeah? It's beyond my studies here. But we have to address this thing as an important aspect of our economic development, which people tend to avoid. We acknowledge we come from with this diversity. How can we do to proceed to the next stage of the growth? So, okay, there is also two main subjects, two main suggestion in this. So, first, equal support in education sector, and then endorses conducive school environment. So this is more micro compared to the first presentation. So what is equal support in education sector? So to avoid exclusion, the local government, has to be the local government. Why? Because the local government knows how many tribes coexist within their region. And no matter who is the head of the region, no matter where he comes or where or she comes from, he or she has to treat all the tribes or the ethnic coexist in her or his region equally. Yeah, especially in the education sector. Yeah. So there is no favoritism, there is no exclusion. So this is the only way we can. This is the only way we can. The children can perform well despite of their ethnicity. Yeah, and how to do that? They provide with the necessary teacher. So if if the region needs teacher comes from, let's say, Bata Bata ethnicity, so they provide teacher with Bata ethnicity, so they can communicate very nice. So that's the same with the region in the Eastern Indonesia. So they put the teacher with the same ethnicity, and then the activity in the school, they have to endorse a inter-socio diversity mentoring program. So there is one mentor who mentoring different children. So different children from different society and different ethnicity. So it will in all school activity. So it accommodates diversity. So since the very beginning, we teach our children not to discriminate, but to treat people with diversity the same with us. And as an adult, a teacher, the local government, they also have to set the good example on treating people who comes from the different ethnicity. I think that's it, my presentation. Should there any question or suggestion, is very welcome. I'm finished. Is it okay? Do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear your voice.
Okay, okay.
Ini sepertinya Pak Prince Charles sedang mengalami trouble connection.
Oh iya, iya, oke, oke, oke.
Jadi, permisi Pak Charles, apakah sudah bisa untuk bergabung kembali untuk melanjutkan sesi Q&A? Sepertinya beliau terlempar lagi.
Iya kayaknya.
Mohon ditunggu sebentar ya untuk.
Ya, it's okay.
kita think
when we are due before the economic what they maintain.
Maaf Pak, untuk suaranya tadi belum terdengar dengan jelas. Mungkin bisa off cam saja, tidak apa-apa Pak jika jaringannya belum stabil. Permisi Pak Charles, apakah bisa mendengar suara saya? Oh, tidak bisa mendengar suara, oke.
Bisa di stop. Stop share. Oh, sorry.
Oke, sembari menunggu moderator untuk terkoneksi, apakah dari peserta ada pertanyaan? Apabila ada pertanyaan, silahkan untuk raise hand dan berbicara secara langsung atau bisa melalui chat box di Zoom ya untuk pertanyaannya. Sudah dibuka dari sekarang. Silahkan.
Belum ada?
Silakan dari partisipan, apakah ada pertanyaan bisa langsung diajukan melalui chat box atau raise hand untuk berbicara secara langsung.
Apakah suara saya bisa kedengaran, Mbak?
Iya, sudah bisa. Untuk suaranya
Can
sudah.
you hear my voice clear?
Yes. Tes, apakah suara saya terdengar oleh Pak Charles? Oke, barusan dari Pak Charles-nya mengkonfirmasi kepada saya bahwa internet atau WiFi di daerah beliau sudah mengalami trouble, jadi saya ingin mencoba untuk membantu di sini. Apakah dari partisipan ada pertanyaan? Mungkin langsung diajukan melalui chat box atau secara verbal melalui raise hand. Silahkan. Masih ada waktu.
test.
Ya, sudah terdengar Pak tadi suaranya.
Okay, several times I miss decision. Maybe now, are we still in question and answer or continue to the next presenter?
Still the Q&A session.
Q and answer?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we can continue. I'm sorry, Mrs. Elsa. This is something trouble with my internet connection.
It's okay, Pak.
We can continue. Yeah, we can continue now. Is there any question from the audience, from participant or other presenter? Please welcome. Is any question? I think the topic is very interesting for us. Is there any question? Still waiting. I want to ask to Mrs. Elsa. As we know, and I know that government expenditure in education allocated is about approximately 20% in APBD every year. I want to know your opinion. Is there 20% a year in APBD is enough to build our education in Indonesia? Because if we see some place in East, in West is different to give their expand in education. So I need your opinion about this problem, please.
Okay, thank you, Pak Charles, for the questions. Here, as I mentioned before, is stipulated in the law. That's our national budget and our regional budget is allocated at least 20% every year to support the education sector. And it's 1/5 of the budget. And there is also a law mentioned there's at least 26% of the national budget should be allocated to the regional government. It's the law of local government. So and then on education sector, there are national programs from the central government. They implement a 9-year basics education, which is free all across Indonesia. So it's, if I'm not wrong, it's financed by the central government. And it's allocated from the 20% of the central government. And there's also the 26% allocated to the local government. It covers in the dana alokasi umum, dana alokasi khusus, dan dana bagi hasil. And for the dana alokasi umum, the government, the local government, they can allocate the fund according to their preference, including in the education sector. And in our decentralization system, the central government now only responsible for 6 functions. And education function is not one of it. So most of the public delivery function, it's now delivered to the local government. How to finance it? They have to use the 26% of the dana alokasi khusus. So I think the total of the resources is more than 20% actually. Yeah. But in terms of how to spend it efficiently, that's maybe the problem here. And how to allocate the education fund in an efficient way. So maybe we should prioritize Of course, the central government, they don't know what is the need of each region. The one they should know is the local government. So I think every local government has different priorities. Of course, they have different priorities in sectors. Maybe in some region, education is not the first one. But in other region, maybe education is the first one. But in the education sector itself, they have different priorities. Maybe in this region, education maybe for the infrastructures as the first priority. Maybe in other region, not for the infrastructures, but for the maybe for the student itself. Yeah. So in this case, I think it's not the amount, but the case is how efficient we spend the amount. As you know, there are still many schools, despite of the large portion of the education budget, there still exist many schools that has a very low infrastructure. So you see, it's not necessarily the problem of the amount of the budget, but it's my private, my personal opinion. It's how we spend it efficiently. So maybe we need to reprioritize both local government and both central government. But the central government actually they don't have to think more about education. Of course, they have to still think about it, but they only have 6 functions now. And that's defense, that's finance, and that's the foreign affairs, religion, and the monetary. But the rest of the function is already distributed to the local government. So in this case, that's why on my proposal, I put emphasis on the local government. On my previous presentation, I put emphasis on the central government. So maybe it's not so the short answer, I don't think it's the case of the amount of money or the resource, but it's mostly on how we spend the resource effectively, efficiently. I think that's my question to you, Mr. Charles.
Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. Elsa. I think you are very focused on educational outcome and educational inequality with income. I think it's very interesting. Maybe sometimes we can make a collaboration in research, if you don't mind, because
no, I don't mind
several
at all.
times I'm doing research about educational, especially in government expenditure in education.
Okay.
Maybe in 2018 until 2019 in East Java.
Okay. Let's have collaboration then, Mr. Charles. I'll be very glad to join.
Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. Elsa, about your presentation today. You have 2 papers, Income Inequality and Educational Outcome in a Decentralized Indonesia, and Influence of Fiscal Decentralization and Ethnic Diversity on Educational Outcome. Yeah. Yes, okay. Please welcome. I will wait your invitation.
Yeah.
Okay, for now, according to the schedule, now we continue to the second presenter and the third paper, Mr. Rifai Afin. The topic is cigarette consumption, human capital investment, and intergenerational income. I want to ask, is there Mr. Rifai only in the room?
Untuk presenter terakhir tidak hadir.
Oh, it's a pity the second presenter on the third paper is not came in yet. So it's yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because the next presenter is not present yet, so maybe we won't just end this session. Mrs. Devita, is no problem if we end the session?
Ya, nggak apa-apa, Pak.
Okay, thank you so much for our presentation. This is only one and only. This is Elsa. It's very, very interesting and open our mind about income equality and educational in our country, in Asia. The presentation of this session, some research results that are very good and very useful. And if they can contribute to improving the educational, economy, and welfare of community in particular. We hope that the result of this study will not only be presented in this forum, but if they can be input and contribute to academic work and for the progress of the nation and state. And finally, keep your spirit up, take care of your health, apply strict health protocol, and always be productive and creative. And thank you so much, and see you in the next event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Terima kasih, Mbak Devita.
Terima kasih
Matur
juga.
nuwun.
Iya, Pak.
Terima kasih, Mbak Devita.
Iya, sama-sama, Pak.
Terima kasih, Pak Charles. Sehat-sehat semuanya.
Ya, terima kasih Pak Charles dan Pak Pak